My guess is that he's going to get something close to that. He'll get over 100 years in prison, which essentially means it's essentially a life sentence.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Guess who I am? I'm Bruce Rivers, your personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer. Today we're reacting to Sam Bankman-Fried and his misdeeds. But before we get to Sam Bankman-Fried, guess what this is? This is brought to you by eSign.com. eSign.com, a very effective way to remotely do business. Let's say, your son's going away for the rest of his life, essentially, but you need an appellate lawyer. So what do? You go to a guy that's already downloaded the app. He's got 3 free signatures a month, and you get a new retainer agreement because your old lawyers who lost the case just don't have your confidence anymore. So, I use it all the time when I have a retainer agreement, somebody can't come into the office, or medical records, bill of sale, any kind of document that you need to get done quickly, or even just for convenience. eSign.com is a very effective way to remotely do business, because if it's not eSign, no one signs. And when I say that I really use it, I'm not lying to you. We use it all the time. So you should too. So, Content Genius and I were talking about the Sam Bankman-Fried thing. And before I get into exactly what happened in court and what the guidelines are and all that stuff, let's just take like a 30,000-foot view of what happened here. You got a guy who went to MIT. The world by the ass. He had the most beautiful girlfriend. Look at the sketch here. This it's a courtroom sketch. She looks a little sad there, but here's the thing. He had all the tools for success. Excellent education, smart, and really essentially what he did, he just took a lot of people's money in and fucking blew it. And used it as his own piggy bank. $8 billion. $8 billion with a B. I couldn't lose $8 billion if I tried. I just don't know how these people do it. I suppose buying a $30 million home. And so one of the things that's going to happen is anybody that received money from Sam Bankman-Fried is going to get what they call a clawback. Generally, the court appoints a receiver after something like this. And what the receiver does, because we had that in Madoff, you start getting into the billions, and that's just so much money, right? So they'll appoint a receiver, and anybody, whether it's a bank, whether it's an investor, anybody that received money from Bankman-Fried is going to get clawed back. In other words, they try to claw the money back so they can start doling it out to victims of the crime. Now, he was in court for the last, 3 or 4 weeks, and he had a trial. At the trial, he testified. You don't really want your client to testify, but I think they thought they didn't have anything to lose because they were going to lose anyway. And then anybody, I think one of the rationales for him testifying was because everybody that was his business associates, including his girlfriend, have all turned on him. Her testimony turned out to be pretty critical, and we'll go into that a little bit here. So he was convicted of all the counts. Chiefly among them were some fraud counts and money laundering counts. He was entrusted with billions of dollars. And he just went and spent it. How do you fucking do that? Let's just take a look at the guidelines. U.S. sentencing guidelines can be found in 2B1.1. That's the loss table. And that's how this whole thing is derived, in terms of what's the punishment. They say he's looking at over 100 years. But let's just try to calculate a little bit of the guidelines. When we go to 2B1.1 in the U.S. sentencing guidelines, there's a table, sentencing table, and you look at the top of the grid, and that's your criminal history category. And you look at the side, and the side is the offense severity level. So because the loss amount was more than $550 million, which is the maximum that the sentencing guidelines go up to, and we're talking $8 billion fucking dollars, we start out at a 30. So because it's over $550 million, he starts out at a 30. That's the base offense level. So that's where you start. And we don't end there, because one of the things that the guidelines does is it takes into account various factors particular to a particular case. So, for example, if the offense was committed through mass marketing, increased by 2. Result in a financial hardship to 5 or more victims, add 4. Subdivision 2C, resulted in a substantial financial hardship to 25 or more victims, which this certainly did. You had 6 levels. There are so many different permutations of other, they call them sentencing enhancements. And those are things that can be added, if those factors existed. Like sophisticated means, for example. Sophisticated means, that's another 2 points. So let's just add those 2 alone and say there's no other sentencing, offense characteristics that apply. So if we look at, that would be 38. 38. Just with no criminal history, at a level 38, you're looking at 235 to 293. But here's the thing. I think he's going to be looking at far more than that. Because he might even get an obstruction charge. If they think that he lied during his testimony, he could get dinged, a couple points for obstruction. And so, if you really look at the long and short of Bankman-Fried's criminal actions, he stole billions of dollars. And had he had more maturity, this is sort of like that CEO of the drug company who was just super arrogant, Martin Shkreli. You're young, you get all this money, and you don't give a shit. The rules, they feel powerful. They get seduced by the money itself, and they make these just shitty decisions. That Elizabeth Holmes, she's another one. Massive, massive fraud. He had a trial this week, and the jury came back and found him guilty on all accounts. So, when you fuck with the feds, their conviction rate is like 96%. Let's just do kind of a quick calculation of where we think his sentence is going to wind up. So just on one of the counts, you start out at a base offense level of 30 because the guidelines go up to 550 million, and this is 8 billion. So you're at a 30. 25 or more people certainly were affected substantially, and so you add 6 points for that. A bulk of this was conducted outside the U.S. from the Bahamas, so you had 12 points for that. It involved transactions that were well over $1 million and affected financial institutions. So you had 2 for the $1 million and 4 for the financial institutions that were affected. So that's, 36, fucking 40, 48, 50, 54. All right? So you start out basically, and then the guidelines only go up to 43. So the guideline calculation really could be life, but you're dealing with a statutory max. So even though the guideline calculations could very likely be life on any one particular count, the statutory max, at least on the first count, is 30 years. So if he gets 30 years on each count, that's why they're saying it's over 100 years, 115 years. So, and in federal court, when you get convicted of multiple counts, rarely do they sentence them concurrently. A lot of times, most of the time, they sentence them consecutively. That means one after another. It's going to be very difficult for these lawyers to really argue anything at sentencing. And you might wonder, well, if he was so guilty and it was so obvious that he was guilty, why'd they go to trial? And the reason, because one of the things you do get if you plead and you admit what you did, you get credit for acceptance of responsibility. He won't get that here because he testified that he was innocent and said he did nothing wrong. And one of the things you look at, owning the behavior, owning the conduct, and he didn't do that. He tried to say, well, I didn't know. But guess what? Just like Donald Jr., when he testified yesterday in another Manhattan courtroom. And when you sit there and say, I didn't know, but you're in a position of having to know, so that knowledge is imputed on you. And when that knowledge is imputed on you, what that means is that you are in a position of trust, a fiduciary, when you were in charge of somebody else's money. And for them to say, look, I just didn't know. It doesn't fly, and the jury didn't buy it here in this case. So Sam Bankman-Fried he's another type of Madoff type of case. And he is going to be going to prison for a very, very long time. When you look at what did Bernie Madoff get? I mean, and that was over $50 billion. $50 billion. He got 150 years in that case. My guess is that he's going to get something close to that. He'll get over 100 years in prison, which essentially means it's essentially a life sentence. My heart goes out to Sam Bankman-Fried's family. His father and mother were in the courtroom. They were crying, and it's difficult to watch a family member, go down like this. I mean, I watched my father go to prison. I watched my father get a guilty verdict, and he had the absolute worst lawyers on the planet, and that's why I became a lawyer. They saw how much money he had, and they just took it. But it's difficult when you watch a family member go down like this and watch him go to prison. It's not easy, especially this is like a fucking murder sentence. You know what I mean? I mean, that's huge. Think about what you're doing before you do it. We all make mistakes. Everybody makes a mistake now and again. The reason these sentences are so big is because so many people are affected. The dollar value is so high, and it's not a mistake. It's calculated behavior that made a lot of people broke. And here's the other thing. He's got 5 more counts that were severed from this trial. And the judge has asked the prosecutors, because they get a trial scheduled in March for the other 5 counts. Are you really going to go forward with those? And they probably won't go forward with. He's already looking at enough time as it is. And as far as restitution, they can lump that conduct and the restitution from that conduct into his current convictions. My heart goes out to everybody, especially the people that lost money because of this. It's just so ridiculous. And for what? Greed. I mean, he got Tom Brady on board as a spokesman. He got donating to political campaigns. He buys himself a $30 million mansion in the Bahamas. It's like, okay, dude, that was not your money. Make sure that you do everything right so you don't have to watch your back like Fried is doing right now. See you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Sign up for Patreon. And give a shout out to our content genius because he is just an amazing, amazing guy. And he just shook his head. I don't know why he shook his head. I love the guy. See you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is that my God?